Eurovision. I do have a soft spot for the contest. I do love watching along and following along. However, I always end up having a love-hate relationship because I think there's still so much wrong with it. However, I want the best for the contest. And even though I imagine not many people will see this, I would like the contest to change in a few ways. Of course, the biggest one being the massive 6-pointed star elephant, not even in the room. It's in the room next door called Asia. But also other things in the contest that I would like to see changed that aren't to do with the 6-starred elephant in the next room. Yeah, Israel. Quite a few Eurovision YouTubers have already been discussing this, and whilst my opinions on it aren't that different, I do feel more strongly about the geographical argument. The EBU may have a remit over a certain geographical area that extends a bit into Asia and Africa, but I think we need to remove that as a requirement, and we need to do it on more of a cultural basis, as not only would this make the contest feel more European, but it would secure not only Israel, but also Azerbaijan's exit from a contest both of them, Azerbaijan formerly, Israel now, have exploited for their own countries bigging up. And it will hopefully secure the continuation of Turkey's absence from the contest. Because while they've never used it for political gain, it's being run by a fascist dictator. And I don't want to see that in Eurovision. And this fascist turn that Erdogan's had has more so come after 2013 and they left. And it was part of the reason they left. So I'm sure most of you know all the antics that happened last year. Their commentators and the delegation tormenting anyone who was openly pro-Palestine like Bambi Thug or Joost Klein. I still think they were to do with the fact that Joost Klein at the very last minute got incredibly unfairly disqualified. I'm almost certain it was an Israeli woman who shoved the camera in his face and was probably trying to politically provoke him, because they were so quick to say it was nothing to do with the situation. And it just seemed like the Israeli delegation got passes for everything. And this year there was such a backlash from the contestants and Eurovision fans from last year. This year, apparently, I mean, I wasn't there, but from what I heard, they were completely siphoned off and, like, barred from interacting with any of the other contestants. I think Yuval, their singer, she could, and unlike Eden Golan from the year before, she did a little bit. To be fair, Eden Golan did need tons of security, but she was willingly acting as a puppet for her country's genocidal administration. So she chose to be sat in her hotel room for many hours of the day. She knew that was coming and she chose to go forward with it. These internal issues were the only things that the EBU seems to change. They just wanted to do like sticky plaster to prevent the hostility in the arena. Whereas all the external stuff, which the rest of the 5 to 6 to 700 million strong continent sees, and nowadays most of the rest of the world, especially the Western world, sees, like submissive vote rigging, adverts, all that other shit, that continued unopposed. The thing is, with these adverts, it technically is in the rules that you can do it, although the fact that Israel pulled off this shit had both Eden Golan and Yuval Raphael saying the advert in 20 plus languages, detectors showing that there was no AI, so both of them willingly chose to do this. Really tells you about their personalities and the sort of personality that the Israeli broadcaster is sniffing out for their Eurovision trees these past couple years. Yeah, willingly did these adverts. They would have had to block off half a day to record all of this and spend the day prior practicing how to speak in all these languages. And the Israeli government, they spent what was the equivalent of millions of dollars, especially on Yuval's campaign, which seemed to be even bigger than Eden's, on pumping out all these adverts over whatever social media they could get. And I remember on Thursday afternoon, so it's just before the second semi-final, which Israel performed in. Yeah, I got the advert. I didn't have to watch it, though. It was just in my feed on YouTube, but I instantly reported it. The inaction from the EBU, as we all saw, meant Israel did almost win with a really lackluster, crappy song. They exactly repeated what they did last year. They sent a young girl who could be their damsel in distress singing some teary-eyed song about, oh, we're so hard done by, but we won't be taken down. We will survive. And apparently she was an October 7th survivor. There's no denying the fact that that was a terrorist attack. It was one of the most atrocious terrorist attacks in human history. But more complex things happened there. The IDF immediately went into action, but in the process shot dead a lot of their fellow Israelis, along with Hamas fighters shooting a lot down. The thing is, it works, and it's worked for the past 2 years. They won the televote this year. My country, along with many others, gave them 12 points. Because they don't count individual people like in the song, they count how many votes the song gets. The contest lets you vote 20 times per credit card or SIM card or whatever. So if you're a massive Israel lover with 6 credit cards and the fact that you have the whole entire contest 3 hours odd to vote, you've got more than enough time to vote 120 times. And people were doing so and proudly tweeting about it. But it just shows how it was heavily rigged. And then, of course, because the Israeli government and all the other crap thinks they have a win, they're like, the silent majority has spoken, they side with us. But it's not. It was a loud, probably very small minority, obsessive about this cause enough to vote 100 times for some mediocre, piss-poor ballad, utterly shitting in the face of the utter torture the Gazans are living under at the moment. Not forgetting the massive oppression and restrictions Palestinians living in the West Bank are constantly under. Because, again, whilst they're not facing genocide, they do face illegal occupation and heavy restriction on their day-to-day life. And it's showing that these voting irregularities and these obsessive people voting 100 times, whatever, was the case. Because even with Belgium, where they didn't qualify, and so their viewing figures for the final went slightly below what it was for the second semi-final, which they performed in. Their voter share, like, it went up tenfold or something. And they gave 12 points to Israel. Yeah, put 2 and 2 together. I mean, Italy said it all. With the league last year, that was during the semi-final because the Netherlands, you were still able to vote for them. But it was like second place, the Netherlands, 7%. First place, Israel, 40%. But again, that is votes. People voting for Israel will vote in 20, 40, 60, 100 times. People voting for the other songs vote once. I didn't vote this year because no song overly stood out to me to get my vote. But last year I voted for Switzerland. But I voted for it once. Not because I'm poor, the vote costs like 20p. But because I'm not going to waste my time constantly at the phone. One, I'm actually watching the contest, unlike most of the Israel voters who just saw tweets or Times Square billboards telling them that it was now time to vote. So I definitely think, firstly, Eurovision needs to ban state broadcaster funding adverts for people to vote for your song. I think if a government wants their country to win Eurovision so badly, they pump out tons of adverts across all social media. They need to be banned from the contest 10 years to really send the message of, if you are going to abuse this contest, you will not compete in this contest. I.e. sort of the same vein of prison. If you are going to abuse people in society, you're out of society. I think if the artist wants to make adverts for voting for your song, that's fine. They do it anyway, like when they're doing the recap from 1 to 26 in the final, they'll say like, I don't know, 17 Austria, and then they'll go to the Austrian singer and their delegation all waving their flags and desperately hoping people vote for them. It's natural. It's natural for the singer and people from that country to want to do it. But the government massively stepping in just screams totalitarian regime. So, as for what is generally being done, there was a meeting in July with all the EBU broadcasters for preparations for the next Eurovision, which is now going to be in Vienna. And they put off a vote on whether Israel will stay. Israel is hoping to compete next year. That's kind of looking thin. I think it was Ireland, Spain, Slovenia, Iceland, and I think Belgium, but it may be a different country. They have firmly confirmed they're out if Israel are in. And yet Spain is a Big Five member, which means they pay lots of money into the contest. The least of the Big Five members, but they're the most out of 40 odd countries. So that's gonna hurt. And the fact that they've confirmed that. Eurovision did survive without Italy and put on some pretty big contests without Italy. Maybe they would survive. But with numbers already being quite low, it was 37 this year. With them 5 out, that's going to be 32. And then there were 10 to 15 odd other countries saying that they would really consider pulling out if Israel stayed, which would then take us down to a number so low in like the early to mid 20s, we would just have a final. We wouldn't have the whole week-long event. But the thing is, for press conferences and rehearsals and all the other preparation, you do need to book out a venue for a couple months for doing Eurovision. This is still a massive TV show broadcast across the planet and needs heavy preparation. And then if you've only got like 25 countries paying in, the fees are going to go up, which then would probably decrease competitors even more. We may have less than 20 in the end. I mean, there not being 2 semi-finals does mean that there's 2 less shows to prepare for, but that's it. All the other stuff you still have to prepare for. You still need to have a conference room about the same size, even if there are 15 less countries. With the way Eurovision has developed, as it's constantly got bigger and bigger and bigger, it's suddenly becoming this small in just 1 year is going to be incredibly hard to weather. And this is what made them boot Russia. Over 10 countries said, oh, we're not competing if Russia gets to stay. And so they booted Russia. Their last song, it wasn't like Glory to Mother Russia. It was a feminist anthem. It was a pretty big antidote to the current political situation in Russia. As a result, Manisha got death threats and people praying for her plane to crash. Whereas, Eden Golan and Yuval Raphael were very much adorned by their fellow countrymen because they're not flying the flag, they're flying the regime. Mia must be portrayed as the victims of Hamas's brutal terror, even though they terrorise 0.03% of the country. You're terrorising 100% of Palestine. But on the other end, what if Israel getting kicked out? Well, no one's actually said that they will definitely leave. Germany has said that they would consider leaving the contest, and they are the biggest financial contributor, and of course still very much have a nationally warped and tinged mindset because of the Holocaust. However, it's not confirmed, and not only are there a lot of pro-Palestine people in Germany, but also I think it would be incredibly unpopular, because whilst I don't think the Germans aren't super fans of Eurovision, they're fans enough. There would be enough uproar that they would find another broadcaster. I think Germany has a few broadcasters that are members of the EBU, and eventually they would stay. They've got options. There will be one broadcaster that says, you know what, we're going to do the entry for this year. I think I saw maybe France would leave, but again, I doubt it. France have been doing pretty well recently, and I think they would want to keep that up. So I really think banning Israel is the only way to keep the contest afloat regarding number of competitors and finances. But the vote will be held in December. They're really delaying this. They're allowing people to quit without penalty until a few days after this vote, because they know whichever way it goes, it's going to cause a ripple. But I'm hoping for a ban on Israel and a ban on poor conduct. Then the televoting. The main gripe I have with the televoting is it is being far too much swayed by diaspora communities. I do not blame diaspora communities for voting for what is technically their own country. But whilst we all compete as different countries in Eurovision, I don't think we should be voting as separate countries. The main thing is, the contest is to unite Europe, and you have each different country performing so that you get to see all the different cultures and languages that we have across Europe. But then have us voting in blocks. Not only does it show loyalties and diaspora, but also it's dividing us. And I think we should all vote as one whole European unit and ditch the rest of the world vote. I think it's fantastic the rest of the world is so obsessed with the contest, especially the Australians. And I still have a soft spot for them. I would keep Australia in. I love Australia being in Eurovision. But the main thing, especially for me being president of the UK, my country always gives its top points in the televote. Every now and then to the song we liked the most. 2019, we did give our 12 to Norway and our 10 to Australia, despite the fact we have hardly any Norwegians in the UK. And there's quite a few Australians, but I could generally tell that was that people loved Spirit in the Sky and Zero Gravity. But usually we're given like 10 and 12 to Poland and Lithuania. I think the main thing is we have a lot of Poles and Lithuanians who are very well integrated into our country, but also feel attached to their home country. 'Cause how can you not? It's still where you were born and raised in your home. It doesn't so much rig, but it tampers with the opinions of native people in our country. So while a country like Poland that has less immigration than the UK, although I do think Poland has now given lots of points to Ukraine because through necessity a lot of Ukrainians now live in Poland, but it's still showing like when the points come through from the televote, I mean it's all aggregated now, but it is showing the diaspora, and I think we need to get rid of that because it's disheartening that my vote as someone who lives in a country with a high immigrant population gets buried by immigrants voting for their home country. And whilst I understand the connection you have, I also think my country is my favourite country in the world. I don't think it's the best. There are many things we don't do well, but I hope the best for it, and I want it to be the best it can be. But I do think we need to rid separate country voting for the televote. It just needs to be one amalgamation of all the votes cast, and also you should only be allowed to vote up to 5 times and once for each song. If you want to vote 5 times, you vote for 5 different songs. 3 times, 3 different songs. You can't vote for a song more than once. And then we do it like they do in Melodifestivalen. That's the Swedish national selection. They pull all the votes from across Sweden and exactly proportionally hand out points as ratios for what percentage of the votes you got. So they'll give out as many points as their juries gave out, and then say if everyone loved the British entry and 20% of votes cast from across Europe were for the UK, instead of 12 points from other countries who thought we were the best, 10 points from second best, 8 points from third best, it would just be 20% of the total number of points all the juries gave out go to the UK, and then go down there further. I also think that would make it far less likely that someone would get 0 points. For trying to stop multiple accounts, I guess it would be doing it through SIM card, but then how do you do it online? It's just so much easier to do it online. Do you register beforehand and have to give in your passport? Like, the passport's the only thing that you can really have one of, or like a driving license. And the only really way to do it that you could only have one account for voting is that they analyse your driving license and make sure there's no duplicate and that you are who you are. But then you'd have to like create a profile on the Eurovision website the night before, and there were loads of people who just couldn't be bothered to do that, who just kind of watched a really funny or really brilliant song and thought, actually, you know what, I am gonna vote. It's only 15p. I'm gonna vote. But then they suddenly get on the website and they have to make this whole account and have their passport or driving license verified to make sure they don't vote 30, 35 or 40 times. And I don't really know how I would get that to work. But most people don't have more than 5. Most people don't have more than 1 credit card. I have 0. I just use a debit card. I guess it's a storm we could just weather. I mean, there would be no Israel anyway, so there'd be no reason to. But there's no reason to in the beginning, but they would feel no reason to. They would know their place. Next, The juries at Eurovision. I remember 2022 there was this whole malarkey of apparently 6 different juries came back with the exact same scores, and so they all had to have aggregate scores created. Part of me kind of thinks that may have been whipped up to kind of distract from how utterly ginormous Ukraine's televote lead was. I know I'm sounding like a crazy conspiracy theorist, that's because I kind of am. I do think it did seem to be strange. There's been the odd problem with juries here and there, but suddenly in 1 year, it suddenly goes from there. I don't really remember there being any problems in 2021 to suddenly 6 juries all clued in with each other in 2022. I think it may have been a bit of a covert setup. I'm struggling to trust anything about the voting system in Eurovision. But anyway, for the juries, they're too small.